Ohio State, remember how you felt when they lost to Michigan? Whether you're a Buckeye fan, a Michigan fan, or just a college football fan in general, remember that feeling? The feeling, I think, for a lot of us was, oh, man, Ohio State's done. They're cooked. Ryan Day's cooked. A lot of us were asking the question, is he even going to be the guy next year in Columbus after that game? Forget the college football playoff. Is he even going to be a guy for Ohio State when we open things up next season? There was a feeling of, I think, they're done for a lot of us. Right now, Ohio State 4 quarters away from winning the whole darn thing. And so the question, I think, needs to be asked, paired with the Michigan loss, paired with their path, is this potentially going to be the most legitimate national championship of all time? Because I think you look at their path, man, on the field, it's the hardest path we've seen. And I know a lot of people are going to push back and say, JD, they lost 2 games the regular season. We'll get to all that. Look at what they actually had to go through, though, man, when it comes to the on-the-field gauntlet. Like we've said before on this show, this season, the Big Ten was the best conference in college football. Outside of the college football playoff, Ohio State played all 3 of those top 3 teams that finished in the standings ahead of them in the Big Ten between Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. Obviously, there's some tiebreaker stuff there with Ohio State and Indiana, but regardless, they had more losses in the conference, so that's why they finished behind them. So you have that in the regular season, paired with what they had to go through in the college football playoff. Of those 3 games they played, 2 of those teams were, at any given point throughout the regular season, ranked number 1 between Texas and Oregon. And Oregon obviously was number 1 when they played them. And then, by the way, sprinkle in Tennessee coming on the heels of a loss that sent your entire fan base into an absolute fray. Pair all that with the number of games you're playing, man. Like the gauntlet that was the regular season, paired with what will be 16 games when they kick it off in Atlanta on Monday night. That's a grind, man. So just purely from a physical standpoint, the competition level for Ohio State, what they've had to go through, they got the most difficult draw, I think, of this entire playoff. And honestly, if you're an Ohio State fan, we talked about this on my socials a little bit earlier, this is probably the path that you wanted for your Buckeyes in kind of a twisted, sadistic way. You wanted them to have to prove it themselves after that loss to Michigan. It's never acceptable to lose to Michigan, especially this year, though, man, with what they were, with hitting the reset button and the new head coach and all that. This was the most unacceptable Michigan loss of Ryan Day's time at Ohio State. So if they were going to win the national championship, they had to make sure they did it on Heisman level. They had to do it on All Madden level. Imagine if Ohio State was playing in this game and you flipped their seed with Penn State. Hey, good for Ohio State. They found their way to the national championship game. Who'd they play early on? SMU and Boise State. No knock to those schools. I love Boise State. I love SMU. But Penn State was in a different zip code when it came to their roster talent between those 2 operations. And it showed. So if Ohio State were to win those 2 games and then beat whoever they would have to beat to get to the national championship game, I guess it would be Notre Dame in that sense, it would kind of feel a little bit watered down, right? Like, oh man, Ryan Day and Ohio State kind of caught a break. No. Based on what they've had to go through in the regular season, based on their playoff seeding, based on just the gauntlet that it has been, they have caught absolutely 0 breaks. None. Right? So there's nothing to be argued about there. And then you piggyback on top of that the off-the-field stuff. And I've kind of alluded to it this entire segment, but I don't know that we can properly quantify the level of strain that had to have put on that locker room and put on Ryan Day. And right now, a game away from winning it all, they didn't break. And I don't want to do the whole thing where we credit Michigan, because we've done that a few times here, and I think it's a fair point to make that, hey, they lost to Michigan and turned them into a different team. Totally fair. But, let's talk about the dark part of that. Got my guy Jack Sawyer talking about, man, I can't go to my favorite wing spot in Columbus. This is dark. And I'm from Columbus. I'm from, not Columbus necessarily. I'm from Ohio, down the road from Columbus. That had to be tough, dude. That had to be so freaking tough. To have your own fan base selling college football playoff tickets. You show up in the shoe for your first ever college football playoff home game. You got 30% of that deal looking like they're, just looking like they're about ready to roll off a Rocky Top. That's difficult, man. To have not just the college football public quit on you in a lot of ways, but to have your own fan base not quit on you, but a lot of fan base, I think, be in some ways rooting for you to lose to kind of get the whole Ryan Day experience over with. I'm not saying everyone, but there definitely was a fraction of that fan base, a fraction of the college football public that was saying that out loud. College football sickos, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. On this show, The Hard Count, it's college football, nothing but college football all year round. Now, this show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy, easy to use, easy to play, easy to withdraw what you win. Follow us here. Use code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com We're going to do our very best to make us all some money. Now, even if we don't, when you play with code HARDCOUNT at PrizePicks.com, make yourself $50 in promo funds to then go ball out the rest of this playoff. So again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds at PrizePicks.com. We appreciate y'all subscribing. We appreciate y'all using that code with our friends PrizePicks. So all that's to say, man, like all those things combined, I don't think there was ever a more uphill battle than what Ohio State has had to go through in this college football playoff run en route to potentially get a national championship done. Now, I understand there's going to be a couple of rebuttals for people that are saying, hey, JD, I disagree. Totally within your right to disagree, but let me tell you what I think you're going to say. You're going to say, well, JD, look at their roster, man. They bought their roster. I hear what you're saying. There's the story of the alleged $20 million roster that Ohio State has. But who did Ohio State really go out and add? Kirk Herbstreit's mentioned this a few times, and I think he's on the money. Like, Ohio State went out and got Will Howard. Okay, 100% true. Got your quarterback now. That it's undeniable. He is a big reason why you're in the spot you're in. You added Caleb Downs, who I've said many times is the best defensive player in college football. Okay, true. Who else? Jeremiah Smith? I understand like he probably wasn't a low price point coming out of high school, but we all understand now it wasn't like Ohio State just flipped their roster over, went and got 20 different individuals to change their whole operation. Like a lot of that $20 million, from what I can gather, was keeping dudes in Columbus that could have gone to the NFL. And as much as you credit Ohio State for having the funds to keep those guys home, I think you also credit the guys in that locker room for saying, you know what, that doesn't sit right with me, finishing the year how we did last year. Cotton Bowl loss, losing to Michigan again, like I don't know about that. And the Michigan loss is the Michigan loss, but to be on the doorstep of winning a national championship, I understand we're all talking about the $20 million and you know what it costs for them to get this team together to go win a national championship. Here's the next question I would ask, though. Is this maybe potentially the new just price of admission to winning a natty in the new era of college football? Like maybe it's not $20 million every year, but I don't think you can be broke these days and put together a roster that's going to go win it all. I don't. Like I know $20 million and all that's being said, and that's kind of the tough look of sorts, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, saying that they paid that much for a roster. Again, I don't think they're going to be alone in that boat if they go win the national championship for future national champions. I kind of just think that's what it requires now. If you want to have top talent to go win 16-ish games and to find yourself hoisting the national championship trophy, I think that's just kind of the world we're living in right now. Now, a lot of folks are also going to point back to the Ryan Day discussion, which is fair. Like I hear you on that too. The Michigan loss is never going to be okay. It's always going to be ugly. It's always going to be something we talk about with him until they do get a win over Michigan here in the future. But the Ryan Day conversation with him winning a national championship, outside of the Michigan talk, there's going to be a lot said about how much talent he had to work with. And they'll say, well, hey, if they didn't win a national championship, it would have been malpractice. And in some ways, I don't disagree. But they did win the national championship in this hypothetical conversation. So however you cut it, Ryan Day deserves credit for putting the pieces together. Like the way that I think about this, like, y'all, I love to cook. I did hotel administration in college. I'm not like this incredible grill master. Like I'm not this wizard in the kitchen. You give me the best ingredients there is, I still would fail to give you a national title level ribeye. It's just the reality, bro. I don't know how to put it together like that. However, you give someone with the proper training to be able to put it together, give them the proper ingredients. They still have to cook, still have to make it all work together, but you credit that chef as much as you credit the ingredients. So again, I'm saying here, like I understand the pushback on Ryan Day and the Michigan loss and all this and that and all the roster talent he had to work with. He still went out, won, and got that roster talent, retained that roster talent, and then put it together. So there's no way that you have this discussion around Ohio State and winning the national championship and somehow water it down for me, in my mind. The last thing that I think you're going to hear people say, and this one I think is maybe the most valid pushback of all. They're going to say, well, in the old model of the college football playoff, forget the BCS, it's just the old model of the 4-team playoff. We had never had a team with 2 losses make the dance. So therefore, Ohio State was actually kind of fortunate we moved to 12 teams when we did, so they were able to go on this run and win a national championship. Therefore, it is invalid that they won the national title as the most difficult run of all time because they lost 2 games in the regular season and the rules we used to play by. Hear you. I was the guy on the front line saying, let's not expand. I love the regular season. Keep it what it is. We're going to have teams lose multiple games, find their way in, catch their stride, get hot, and that'll be that. I hear you. But this is the world we're living in now. We can't retroactively go back and say that trophy counts, that trophy doesn't. Like, imagine if we did this with other sports. And y'all know me, I hate comparing college football to other sports because college football is one of one. But just imagine, like, how dumb would it be if we watered down what Steph Curry has been in the NBA? And he's lucky we had a three-point line when he was around. Yeah, he is lucky we had a three-point line when he was around. So are all of us because we got to see what he is. So are all of us seeing what Ohio State is right now playing at the highest level. Like, I don't know about y'all. I love seeing Ohio State put it together and play the brand of ball they're playing right now. I love seeing them turn it on and rise from the adversity that they had post-Michigan. I think that's awesome. I think that's phenomenal. And is it what we're accustomed to? Does it take some adjusting? Are the optics a little bit wonky from the jump? Yeah, but guess what? These are the rules right now. We don't get to take away points from a national championship just because it wasn't by the previous set of rules. Here's the other thing, too. We're going to see this thing expand in the future. I have to believe that. I mean, that's my take on things. I don't think they're going to put the genie back in the bottle and go to less teams. We're going to see more teams with multiple losses win national titles. And I'd be surprised if we saw a team in Ohio State's spot have to play the gauntlet they did in the Big Ten and then have to go play the gauntlet they did to win the national championship if they get that done. There will always be the Michigan excuse. I hear that. But there will never be a more difficult earned national championship than Ohio State if they get it done in Atlanta. And Ohio State Buckeye fans, they wanted it that way. Make no mistake, they wanted it that way because of the shortcomings during the regular season, especially to end the season. Let me know your thoughts on that, though. I think that's kind of one of the most intriguing parts of the whole discussion around Ohio State, if they do, in fact, get it done.